That morning, she went to the kitchen, where she found Michael and Grace talking in hushed tones. She walked in quietly, her heart pounding in her chest. They didn't notice her at first, but when they did, the guilt was written all over their faces. "What's going on here?" Sarah demanded, her voice trembling with anger and hurt. Michael tried to deny it at first. Once upon a time, there was a lady named Sarah. She lived in a big, beautiful house with her husband, Michael. They loved their home, but it was so big that they needed help to keep it clean. One day, a new helper named Grace came to live with them. Grace was very nice. She had shiny brown hair and a smile that made you feel warm inside. Sarah liked Grace right away. "Hello, Grace," said Sarah. "We're happy you're here to help us." "Thank you, Mrs. Sarah," Grace replied kindly. "I'm happy to be here." Grace helped with cleaning, cooking, and taking care of the house. She was very good at her job, and the house looked shiny and bright. As the weeks turned into months, Grace's presence in the house grew more significant. She was more than just a housemaid. She was a friend and a companion. Sarah was grateful for Grace's support, and often praised her for her hard work and dedication. But something else was happening, something that Sarah did not notice at first. Michael had started to pay more attention to Grace. He admired her beauty, her kindness, and the way she effortlessly handled the household tasks. He found himself looking forward to the moments when he could be around her, whether it was during breakfast or when she was playing with the children. Grace, too, noticed the attention she was receiving from Michael. She appreciated his kindness and the way he always treated her with respect. But as time went on, she began to sense something more in his gaze, something that made her heart beat a little faster. Despite these feelings, Grace continued to do her job, always mindful of her place in the household. She was careful not to cross any boundaries, but she couldn't help but enjoy the special attention from Michael. Michael's feelings for Grace grew stronger with each passing day. He couldn't stop thinking about her, and he began to find excuses to be around her. He would offer to help her with the chores, even though he had never done so before. He would linger in the kitchen while she cooked, just to watch her work. And sometimes, he would find reasons to talk to her, even if it was just about the weather or the flowers in the garden. Sarah, busy with the children and the daily tasks, did not notice the change in her husband's behavior. She trusted Michael completely and never imagined that he could be tempted by another woman. But Michael was struggling with his feelings. He knew that what he was doing was wrong, but he couldn't help himself. Grace was always so kind and understanding, and she never made him feel like he was doing anything wrong. The more time he spent with her, the more he wanted to be with her. One day, Michael found himself alone in the kitchen with Grace. He looked at her, and before he knew it, he reached out and took her hand. Grace looked up at him, surprised, but she didn't pull away. They stood there for a moment, neither of them saying anything, just holding hands. Michael knew that he was crossing a line, but he couldn't stop himself. He was falling in love with Grace, and he didn't know what to do. The moment in the kitchen was the beginning of a secret affair between Michael and Grace. They were careful to keep it hidden from Sarah, but the guilt weighed heavily on both of them. Michael knew that he was betraying his wife, but his feelings for Grace were too strong to ignore. They would steal moments together whenever they could, a brief touch here, a stolen kiss there. They would meet in the garden at night, where they could be alone under the cover of darkness. Grace knew that what they were doing was wrong, but she was in love with Michael, and she couldn't bear to leave him. Sarah, meanwhile, was growing more distant from her husband. She couldn't put her finger on what was wrong, but she knew that something had changed. Michael was no longer the loving, attentive husband he once was. He was often distracted, and he spent less time with the children. The once happy home was now filled with tension and uncertainty. The children, too, noticed the change in their parents. They missed the days when their father would play with them and tell them stories. Now, he was always busy, always preoccupied with something that they couldn't understand. Sarah couldn't ignore the growing distance between her and Michael any longer. She began to notice the way he looked at Grace, the way he always seemed to be near her. She started to feel a knot of fear in her stomach, but she pushed it aside, telling herself that it was just her imagination. But as the days went by, the signs became harder to ignore. Michael was spending more and more time with Grace, and he was becoming more secretive. He would leave the house without telling Sarah where he was going, and he would come back late at night, with no explanation. Sarah's heart ached with worry. She didn't want to believe that Michael was cheating on her, but the evidence was there. She began to watch him more closely, trying to catch him in the act. She would listen at doors, follow him around the house, and ask the children if they had seen anything unusual. The stress took its toll on Sarah. She couldn't sleep, and she couldn't eat. She was consumed by the fear that her marriage was falling apart, and she didn't know what to do. She felt alone and helpless, trapped in a nightmare that she couldn't escape. The day of reckoning finally came, when Sarah's worst fears were confirmed. She had been up all night, unable to sleep, her mind racing with thoughts of Michael and Grace. She decided to confront them both, unable to bear the pain and uncertainty any longer. That morning, she went to the kitchen, where she found Michael and Grace talking in hushed tones. She walked in quietly, her heart pounding in her chest. They didn't notice her at first, but when they did, the guilt was written all over their faces. "What's going on here?" Sarah demanded, her voice trembling with anger and hurt. Michael tried to deny it at first, but Sarah could see the truth in his eyes. She turned to Grace, who looked down at the floor, unable to meet her gaze. "Tell me the truth, Grace," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "Are you having an affair with my husband?" Grace nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I never meant for this to happen." Michael tried to explain, but Sarah didn't want to hear it. The betrayal was too deep, the pain too overwhelming. She screamed at him, called him every name she could think of, her heart shattering with each word. Grace stood there, sobbing, unable to say anything that could make the situation better. She knew that she was just as guilty as Michael, and she hated herself for it. The house that was once filled with love and laughter was now a place of anger, tears, and heartbreak. Sarah couldn't look at Michael without feeling a wave of pain and betrayal. The man she had loved and trusted had broken her heart, and she didn't know if she could ever forgive him. Michael, too, was filled with regret. He knew that he had made a terrible mistake, and he wanted nothing more than to make things right with Sarah. But every time he tried to talk to her, she would turn away, unable to face him. The children sensed the tension and sadness in the house, and they didn't understand why their parents were so unhappy. They missed the days when their family was whole and happy, and they didn't know how to make things better. Sarah decided that the only way to start healing was to remove Grace from their lives. She couldn't bear to see her in the house any longer, and she knew that Michael's feelings for her would only cause more pain. With a heavy heart, Sarah told Grace that she had to leave. Grace didn't argue. She knew that it was the right thing to do. She packed her things, said goodbye to the children, and left the house, her heart heavy with guilt and sorrow. Grace's departure left a void in the household. The children were sad to see her go, but they sensed that it was for the best. Sarah tried to pick up the pieces of her life, focusing on her children and trying to rebuild her trust in Michael. Michael, too, was struggling. He missed Grace, but he knew that his actions had hurt the woman he truly loved. He wanted to make things right with Sarah, but he didn't know where to start. The guilt weighed heavily on him, and he knew that it would take time to heal the wounds he had caused. Sarah tried to move on, but the betrayal was always in the back of her mind. She couldn't forget the look on Michael's face when she caught him with Grace, and she couldn't shake the feeling that her marriage would never be the same. Despite the pain and heartache, Sarah and Michael were determined to rebuild their marriage. They knew that it would take time, patience, and a lot of work, but they were willing to try. For the sake of their children and the love they once shared, they wanted to find a way to move forward. They started by talking openly about what had happened. Michael apologized again and again, and Sarah slowly began to forgive him. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the pain felt too much to bear, but they kept working at it. They spent more time together as a family, trying to bring back the happiness that had once filled their home. They took the children on outings, played games together, and tried to focus on the good times. Over time, the wounds began to heal. The love between Michael and Sarah grew stronger, and they learned to trust each other again. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a new beginning, a chance to rebuild what had been broken. In the end, they realized that love isn't always easy, but it's worth fighting for. They had been through the worst, but they had come out stronger on the other side. And as they looked at their children, playing happily in the garden, they knew that they had found their way back to each other. The story of Michael, Sarah, and Grace teaches a powerful lesson about the consequences of betrayal and the importance of trust in relationships. It highlights how fleeting desires and poor choices can shatter the foundation of a loving home, causing deep emotional pain and lasting scars. The story also underscores the value of communication, honesty, and commitment in a marriage. When trust is broken, it takes time, effort, and sincere forgiveness to heal. However, it also shows that, with determination and love, it is possible to rebuild and find a new beginning. Ultimately, the story reminds us that true happiness comes from loyalty, respect, and cherishing the relationships we hold dear, rather than giving in to momentary temptations.
Thank you so much for watching. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment with your thoughts or any questions you might have. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more great content and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. And if you found this video helpful or entertaining, please share it with your friends and family. Your engagement helps the channel grow, and I truly appreciate it. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.